It started like any other morning. The sunlight slipped through the kitchen blinds, cutting thin lines across our old wooden table. I was stirring my coffee, enjoying that rare moment of quiet before the day really began. That's when my daughter, Emily, stormed in. Her eyes were red, her jaw was tight, and she didn't even say good morning. "Mum," she snapped, her voice sharp and cold, "I need your credit card." It wasn't a question. It was a demand, an order from a stranger standing in my kitchen. I set my mug down slowly, trying to keep my voice steady. "What for, sweetie?" I asked gently, trying to understand where this was coming from. She sighed, one of those huge, dramatic sighs that teenagers have perfected. "There's a limited edition phone I want. It's dropping today, and Dad said no. You always say yes." Her words stung a little, but I tried to smile to ease the tension that had filled the room. "Sweetheart, I think you've already bought enough lately. Maybe we could wait a bit, save up for it." Before I could even finish my sentence, she lunged for my wallet sitting on the counter. Instinctively, I moved to block her, stepping between her and my purse. And that's when it happened. In a flash of anger, she grabbed my coffee cup still hot and hurled the contents straight at me. The dark, scalding liquid splashed across my blouse, soaking through to my skin. It burned. The sound of the ceramic cup shattering on the floor echoed through the kitchen like a gunshot. For a moment, everything went silent. The only sound was the frantic drumming of my own heartbeat. She stood there, frozen, her chest heaving with ragged breaths. Then she muttered, "You're so selfish," and stormed out of the room, slamming the door behind her. I stood there, shaking, coffee dripping from my hands onto the floor. The pain from the burn was sharp, but the pain in my heart was 1,000 times worse. In that moment, looking at the shattered pieces of my favorite mug, I realized with a terrifying clarity that I didn't recognize my own child. That night, I sat on the back porch with an ice pack pressed to my chest. The burn stung, but not nearly as much as the memory of her eyes when she looked at me. It wasn't just anger I saw. It was something colder, something that felt like contempt. I kept replaying the morning in my mind, over and over again, like a movie I couldn't turn off. How did we get here? How did my sweet little girl, the one who used to draw me pictures and bring me dandelions, turn into this person? I started thinking back, searching for clues, for the exact moment the tracks switched. Was it when I started giving in to her tantrums just for a moment of peace? I remembered when she was little, maybe 5 or 6, crying in the toy aisle for a doll she just had to have. I was tired, other shoppers were staring, and it was just easier to say yes. Was that the first brick in this wall between us? Or maybe it was later, when she was a preteen. All her friends had the latest gadgets, the most fashionable clothes. I didn't want her to feel left out. It's just a phase, I told myself. I'm just helping her fit in. So I worked extra hours. I dipped into our savings. I bought her things we couldn't really afford, all in the name of her happiness. I thought I was showing her love, but looking back, was I just teaching her that her wants were more important than our family's needs? My husband, Mark, had tried to warn me. He'd say things like, "Honey, she needs to learn the value of $1, or we're creating a monster." I'd always brush it off. "You're being too hard on her," I'd reply. "She's just a kid." I was the good cop, the one she could always run to when Dad said no. I thought it meant she loved me more, but now I see I was just the path of least resistance. I wasn't being her parent. I was being her personal ATM. The guilt was overwhelming. I had done this. I had taught her that love was transactional. I had taught her that throwing a fit would get her what she wanted. I had shielded her from every disappointment, every no, every struggle. I thought I was protecting her, but I had actually left her completely unprepared for the real world. A world that doesn't just hand you things on a silver platter. The burn on my chest was a physical reminder of the emotional damage I had caused. The shattered coffee cup on the floor was a perfect metaphor for our shattered relationship. I had broken it, piece by piece, with every yes that should have been a no. As the stars came out, I made a decision. This had to stop. Not just for my sake, but for hers. Continuing down this path would only lead her to a life of unhappiness and entitlement. It was going to be hard. There would be more tantrums, more silent treatments, more slammed doors. But I couldn't let my fear of her anger stop me from being the parent she desperately needed. The next morning, I was a nervous wreck. What would I say? How would she react? I found Emily in her room, scrolling through her phone, pretending I didn't exist. The air was thick with unspoken anger. I took a deep breath and sat on the edge of her bed. "Emily," I began, my voice trembling slightly. "We need to talk about yesterday." She didn't look up. "There's nothing to talk about." "Yes, there is," I insisted, finding a strength I didn't know I had. "What you did was not okay. You hurt me, Emily, physically and emotionally, and it was a wake-up call." She finally looked at me, her eyes defensive. "You started it. You said no, and I'm going to be saying no more often," I said firmly, "because I've failed you. I've been so focused on giving you what you want that I haven't given you what you need. And what you need are boundaries. What you need is to understand that you can't treat people this way." I laid out the new rules. She would get it. How did the little girl who used to draw me cards and tell me I was her best friend become this angry stranger who barely looks me in the eye? It's a question that haunts me, that keeps me up at night, replaying every moment, every decision. Maybe it all started years ago, when her father packed his bags and walked out of our lives. She was only 10. Just a little girl with pigtails and a gap-toothed smile, suddenly facing a world that had cracked right down the middle. In that moment, I made a silent vow. I would be everything for her. I would fill the void he left behind. I would give her all the comfort, the stability, the unwavering sense of love that she had lost. And so my campaign of yes began. "Mum, can I have the new doll?" Yes. Can we go to the amusement park again? Yes. Can I get those expensive sneakers all my friends have? Yes. Every single yes felt like I was carefully stitching up a wound, patching the hole in her heart. Every gift, every treat, every permission slip signed without a second thought felt like tangible proof that I could still make my little girl happy, that I was a good mother. But looking back now, I see the flaw in my logic. I wasn't teaching her about love. I was teaching her a distorted version of it. The kind that came with no boundaries, no limits, no understanding of the word no. I was building a world for her on a foundation of indulgence, not strength. And so, Emily grew up, not surrounded by family dinners or long talks, but by things, piles of things, expensive clothes with the tags still on, the newest gadgets that were obsolete in a month, and endless shopping trips that became our only shared activity. I told myself it was normal, that this was just my way of making her feel secure, of showing her that her world wouldn't crumble again. But as she moved into her teenage years, I noticed a shift. The bright-eyed gratitude she once had slowly faded, replaced by a cool, unblinking entitlement. No became a trigger word. If I said it, her eyes would roll so far back I thought they'd get stuck. If I even hesitated, the guilt trips would start. "You don't love me like other mums do," she'd say, her voice dripping with accusation. It was a masterclass in emotional manipulation, and I was her most willing student. At first I'd laugh it off, ruffle her hair, and eventually give in. But as the years stacked up, something inside me changed. I became afraid of her temper, genuinely afraid. Her anger wasn't just a teenage tantrum, it was a force of nature. It filled our small apartment, rattled the windows, and silenced any argument I tried to make. Once, she shouted so loudly, her voice raw and cracking with rage over some trivial thing, that our neighbor, Mrs. Henderson, called to check if everything was okay. I remember standing there, phone pressed to my ear, heart pounding, stammering that we were just watching a loud movie. And every time it happened, every time she raised her voice, I'd retreat. I'd give in. Because arguing with Emily felt like trying to stop a hurricane with my bare hands. It was pointless and exhausting. I just wanted the storm to pass. Until that one morning, the morning she threw the coffee. That was the day I finally realized the truth. The storm hadn't passed. The storm had already destroyed everything in its path, and I was standing in the wreckage. 4 days after the incident, a thick, suffocating silence filled our home. Emily avoided me, like I was a ghost. She locked herself in her room, the bass from her music thumping through the walls until the early hours of the morning. It was her fortress, and I was the enemy she was keeping out. I must have cleaned the kitchen floor a dozen times, scrubbing at the spot where the hot coffee had splattered against the cabinets. But the faint, burnt smell lingered. It was like a scar on our home, a constant reminder of what had happened. A part of me, the part that was tired and hurt, wanted to pound on her door, to shout, to demand an apology, to make her see the pain she'd caused. But another part of me, the part that was a mother, was just scared. Scared of pushing her further away. Scared of another explosion. So I waited. I did the laundry. I made dinner. She never came out to eat. And I waited. I hoped that the anger would cool. I hoped that the daughter I remembered, the one who made me friendship bracelets out of yarn, would eventually return. One night, my heart ached with a loneliness so profound I couldn't bear it anymore. I found a piece of paper and wrote a small note. My hands were shaking as I scribbled the words, "I love you, Emily. I just need you to understand that saying no dose and tea mean I dan tea care." It was all I could manage. It felt so small, so inadequate against the mountain of our problems. I slipped the envelope under her door and retreated to my room, listening. I listened for the sound of the paper being picked up, for the creak of her door opening, but there was nothing. Just the muffled beat of her music. Just silence. And in that silence, I felt a new kind of dread. The silence wasn't a ceasefire.
A week later, I got a text from my bank. It was an alert for a charge nearly $1,000 on an account I didn't recognize. My heart started pounding as I logged in to check the details. When I saw the name on the new account, my stomach completely dropped. It was Emily's name. She had opened a credit line in my name, using my ID, which she must have swiped from the drawer in my home office. I drove home, my hands shaking on the steering wheel, a mix of white-hot anger and crushing heartbreak swirling inside me. When I walked in, she was on the couch, scrolling through her phone. I held up the bank statement. I waited for a reaction, for any sign of remorse. But her expression didn't even flicker. "Oh, that," she said. So casually it took my breath away. "Relax. I'll pay it back." "Emily," I whispered, my voice trembling. "This is fraud. This is a crime. You could get into serious trouble." She rolled her eyes, the same way she did when she was a teenager. And I'd asked her to clean a room. "God, you're so dramatic," she scoffed. "It's just money. You've always got some stashed away somewhere." That's when it hit me like a physical blow. She didn't feel sorry. She didn't even think she'd done anything wrong. In her mind, she was entitled to it. The daughter I had raised, the one I taught the value of kindness and honesty, no longer seemed to understand what either of those things meant. It was like looking at a stranger wearing my daughter's face. The empathy, the connection we once shared, was gone. That night, I lay awake for hours, the ceiling staring back at me. My heart felt like it was being torn into a million pieces. How did we get here? What did I do wrong? But I knew I couldn't let this continue. Enabling her wasn't an act of love. It was participating in her self-destruction. So, I made a decision, the hardest one of my entire life. The next morning, I sat her down. "Emily?" I started, my voice steadier than I felt. "You have two choices. You can report the fraud yourself, close the account, and get into a program to get help. Or you have to move out." Her face twisted with pure disbelief, then hardened into anger. "You're kicking me out? Your own daughter? After everything?" "No," I said softly, trying to keep my own tears at bay. "I'm asking you to grow up. I'm asking you to take responsibility for your actions. I will always love you, but I will not let you destroy my life, or your own, under my roof." She laughed. It wasn't the sound of amusement. It was a cruel, bitter, hollow sound that I know will echo in my memory forever. "You just want control," she spat. "You always have. You can't stand that I have my own life." There was nothing left to say. The words hung in the air between us, thick and suffocating. She went to her room and started packing. The sounds of drawers slamming and hangers scraping were like gunshots in the quiet house. A few hours later, she dragged her suitcases to the front door, and when she walked out, she didn't look back. Not even on set. The next morning, the silence was deafening. The house, once filled with her presence, now felt vast and unbearably quiet. Every corner held a ghost. I could almost hear her laughter from the living room, the sound of her footsteps on the stairs, the low hum of her blow-dryer from the bathroom. Now, it was just nothing. An echoing emptiness. On the kitchen counter sat a single coffee mug, the same one she had thrown at the wall just days before. I'd picked it up, but I hadn't been able to bring myself to wash it or put it away. It was a stark, ceramic reminder of the anger that had shattered our home. Days bled into weeks. I tried to stay busy, to create a new routine. I deep-cleaned the house. I cooked elaborate meals for one. I'd binge-watched old shows I'd seen a dozen times, but every sound was magnified in the silence. The ticking of the clock, the hum of the refrigerator, the creak of the floorboards, each one a reminder that I was alone. The habits were the hardest part. I'd catch myself setting 2 plates for dinner, my hands moving on autopilot. Then, with a lump in my throat, I'd quietly put one back in the cabinet. I'd buy her favorite ice cream at the grocery store before remembering she was there to eat it. At night, I'd lie in bed and stare at my phone, my thumb hovering over her contact photo. The urge to call her, to just hear her voice, was overwhelming. I wanted to tell her I was sorry, even though I knew I hadn't done anything wrong. But love is a strange, irrational thing. It doesn't always care about who's right or who's wrong. It just wants peace. It just wants connection. And mine was screaming into a void. I just hoped, prayed, that one day she'd be ready to listen. Thank you so much for listening to my story. If you've ever had to make a difficult choice for someone you love, you know how heavy it can be. If you connected with this, please consider liking this video and subscribing to the channel. It really helps more than you know. Take care.
So I waited and waited, night after night. The silence in the house felt heavier, a constant reminder of the empty space she had left, until one rainy evening, the kind of night where the sky seems to be weeping along with you, the doorbell rang. It was a sharp, sudden sound that cut through the storm. I opened the door, and there she was, Emily, drenched, shivering, her mascara creating dark rivers down her cheeks. The rain was relentless, pouring down behind her as if it had been holding its breath, waiting for this very moment. She looked so much smaller than the defiant girl I remembered, swallowed by the storm and her own sorrow. Her voice, when it finally came, was a fragile crack. "Mum, can I come in?" I didn't say a word. I just stepped aside. She walked into the living room, her eyes darting round, taking in every familiar object as if she were seeing it for the first time or perhaps for the last. The old armchair, the bookshelf overflowing with our shared stories, the faint scent of cinnamon that always lingered in the air. We sat across from each other, the old grandfather clock in the hall ticking loudly, marking the seconds of a silence that stretched for years. Finally, she broke it, her voice a near whisper. "I lost my job. My boyfriend. He kicked me out. I don't know where else to go." Tears welled up in my own eyes, hot and sudden, but I blinked them back. I had to be the calm one, the anchor in her storm. "You can stay," I said, my voice steady, though my heart was hammering against my ribs. "But things have to change." She nodded, her lower lip trembling. I know, she whispered, her gaze falling to her hands. I've been awful. I didn't realize how much I hurt you. And in that moment, for the first time in what felt like a lifetime, I saw something genuine in her eyes. It wasn't the usual anger or the sense of entitlement that had driven us apart. It was remorse. Pure, heartbreaking remorse. The next few weeks were a delicate dance. We were like strangers, relearning how to live in the same space, cautiously navigating the fragile territory of trust. She found a part-time job at a quiet downtown bookstore, the kind of place she used to love as a girl. She started helping around the house without being asked, her small gestures speaking volumes. Sometimes she'd come home from her shift, tired but present, and quietly make a pot of tea for both of us. We'd sit in the kitchen, the steam warming our hands, and just be. We didn't talk much about the past. The wounds were still too raw, the words too sharp. But her actions began to stitch the pieces of our broken relationship back together, one quiet evening at a time. She was showing me, not just telling me, that she was trying then. One night, after we'd finished washing the dishes together, she placed a small, neatly wrapped box on the table in front of me. I looked at her, confused. She just gave me a small, hesitant smile. I carefully untied the ribbon and lifted the lid. Inside, nestled in tissue paper, was a coffee mug. It was simple, white porcelain with elegant gold letters that spelled out 2 words, "Thank you." I looked up at her and she met my gaze. I thought, maybe we could start over, she said softly, her voice filled with a hope that I hadn't heard in years. I ran my thumb over the smooth, cool ceramic, feeling the weight of her gesture. A smile spread across my face, a real, genuine smile that reached my eyes, and I had to fight back the happy tears. And for the very first time since she had walked back through that door, I truly believed her. I believed we could. This journey has been one of the hardest of my life, but it has taught me so much about patience, forgiveness, and the incredible strength of a parent's love. If you're going through something similar, please know that you are not alone. There is always hope for healing, even when it feels impossible. Thank you so much for listening to my story. If it resonated with you, I'd be so grateful if you like this video and subscribe to the channel for more stories about life, love, and finding our way back to each other. See you in the next one. Even now, after all this time, I find myself sitting at my old wooden table, pen in hand, writing letters I know I'll never send. It's become a strange sort of ritual. In these letters, I pour out everything I couldn't say for so long. I write about the lost years, the holidays spent in silence, the birthdays that passed with just a text message, if that. I write about the heavy, aching pain I carried in my chest, a constant companion that reminded me of what I'd lost. I describe the fear that clawed at me in the middle of the night, the fear of being completely forgotten by the person I loved more than anyone else in the world, my own daughter. It's a fear that only a parent who has felt that distance can truly understand. It's the terror of becoming a stranger to your own child, of your shared history fading into nothing but a collection of old photographs. I write about the anger, too. The flashes of resentment that would surface when I saw other families laughing together. I'd ask myself, why not us? Where did we go so wrong? I'd trace the lines of our fallout, trying to pinpoint the exact moment the crack in our relationship became an uncrossable chasm. Was it that argument? That missed phone call, that one harsh word that could never be unsaid? But here's the thing about these letters. No matter how much pain or anger I pour onto the page, they always end the same way. With three simple, yet incredibly difficult words. I forgive you. And in writing them, I realized something profound. Forgiveness isn't about letting the other person off the hook. It's not about pretending the hurt never happened or excusing the past. It's about freeing yourself. It's about untying the anchor that keeps you chained to that pain, preventing you from moving forward. It's about choosing peace for your own heart. Rebuilding with Emily hasn't been like flipping a switch. It's a slow, deliberate process. We are still learning each other, discovering the people we've become during our time apart. It's like learning a new dance. Sometimes we step on each other's toes and the rhythm is off, but we keep trying. We're piecing our relationship back together, one small, fragile moment at a time. It's in the way she now calls just to say hello, or when she sends me a funny picture she saw online, knowing it would make me smile. Some days are undeniably hard. The old habits, the old hurts, they have a way of creeping back in. A misspoken word can bring back a shadow of the old tension. My temper, which I thought I had buried, sometimes flashes before I can stop it. And I see a flicker of the old caution in her eyes. In those moments, doubt whispers in my ear, telling me that this is too broken to fix. But then, something happens to silence that voice. Just this morning, as she was about to leave for work, Emily turned back, wrapped her arms around me, and gave me a hug. It wasn't a quick, obligatory gesture. It was real. And in that embrace, I felt a warmth spread through my chest, a profound, soul-deep warmth I honestly thought was gone forever. It was the feeling of home. And so, every morning, as I stand in my quiet kitchen and pour my coffee, the aroma filling the air, I'm filled with this incredible sense of gratitude. I remember the cold silence, the empty rooms, the years of quiet despair, and I remember that no matter how deep love gets buried, no matter how much dirt and rock and pain is piled on top of it, sometimes, against all odds, it finds its way back home. It claws its way back to the surface, gasping for air, ready to live again. If you're listening to this and you're a parent, maybe you know this kind of pain. It's not the loud, dramatic kind. It's a quiet suffering, the kind that doesn't scream but sinks silently into your bones, day after day, year after year. It's the ache of an empty chair at the dinner table, the unsent I love you texts, the hope that flickers and fades with each passing season. It's a private grief for someone who is still alive. And if you're a child listening to this, a son or a daughter, maybe this story reminds you of someone, a parent, a grandparent. Maybe it brings to mind a relationship that has grown distant, a connection that has frayed over time. Perhaps you've hurt them, maybe without even fully realizing the depth of the wound. We get so caught up in our own lives, our own struggles, that we forget the people who held us up when we couldn't stand on our own. Please don't wait. Don't wait until it's too late to say, "I'm sorry," or even just, "Thank you." Don't let pride, that stubborn, foolish thief, destroy the hands that once fed you, that bandaged your knees, that held you when you cried. Pick up the phone, write the letter, make the visit. That bridge might seem long and broken, but the first step is the hardest, and you don't have to take it alone. Because the honest truth is, love, once it's truly lost, doesn't always come back. My story is one of the lucky ones. But for so many, the silence becomes permanent. The chance is gone forever. So, if you are lucky enough to get that second chance, if love does find its way back to you, hold it gently. Protect it. Nurture it. Because that kind of comeback, that kind of grace, is rarer and more precious than you think. Thank you so much for listening and for sharing this time with me. If this story resonated with you, I'd be so grateful if you'd like this video and subscribe to the channel. It helps more than you know. Take care of each other.